why do we want to prevent crime? Unless we're some ends-based.
It's not we want to prevent crime. It's we recognize what causes crime and should try and unmask.
What does it mean to recognize what causes
the Ryman argument indicates that when we adopt retributive policies of justice, we ignore the root cause of crime because we say.
Yeah, but why do we care about what the root causes are?
Well, my argument as to why we care about what the root causes are is because the government has an obligation to ensure that crime does not occur. Either from a ideological perspective or from a consequentialist perspective, right? My argument is that the government's obligation...
Okay, from a deontological perspective, why does the government have to prevent crime?
I mean, because it harms individuals' autonomy, it harms individuals' pursuit of their goals, rights, right? Like, my argument is that the first...
Deontology has to do with intents.
And in some
the government has to respect its
right? In this case, the intent would be to ensure that crime, like the intent would be to ensure that we recognize what caused crime, or the intent would be to adopt the government's obligation, right?
But you never prove the obligation, you assume it.
No, the Hudson argument proves the obligation. Hudson says the state should be obligated to provide rehabilitation to criminals. It's the only way that it can recognize that the conditions that people are in, that it can recognize those conditions.
What is Strawson? What you say?
So the first Strawson argument says that things like deontology or retribution don't make sense because they assume that we can assign due to people and say that we should give them their due or respect.
Why can't we assign due?
Well, okay, so that's what the argument explains. It says that people are not morally responsible for the person they turned out to be.
So you're saying that, so it says that free will doesn't exist?
I mean, like, it's not like there are neurological firings in our mind. It's not that kind of, like, determinism. The argument is just that we may choose to act how we want to, but that will be based on prior experience or hereditary factors that we have no control over. So the Strawson.
So it's saying that free will does not exist?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, it says that you're not responsible for the actions that you take.
What is the Scheffler argument?
So the Scheffler argument says that deontology doesn't make sense because it assumes that we're posited with a choice where we can take one choice that wouldn't violate a deontic constraint. But that is not what the case of the topic is. Either way, someone's deontological right is...
Do you ever show deontological violations in both worlds?
Well, I mean, my argument is that when we allow for these rights to occur, like you can say that it wouldn't be a deontological violation, but that misses the point because his argument is that all actions require some trade-off. That trade-off will inevitably harm someone's right. So there's a dance, like it doesn't ask the right moral question.
What's the implication of the theory stuff at the top of ABC?
That's also African reform.
Okay.
Just different arguments.
NC
40 left?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not reading the orange one, unfortunately. Okay. Ready? Ought is defined as expressing duty or obligation. Proving an absence of the resolution obligation thus sufficient to indicate that the resolution is false, treating juveniles and adults merely optional rather than obligatory. This interpretation also must not common usage statement. I'm obligated to go to Florida. Implications disprove and going to Florida is merely optional, even if it is proven. If deontological violations of equal weight occur in both worlds, and the resolution action becomes permissible in either course of action, justified is just as legitimate as the other. The reasons the rational needs to use justify their action must be universalizable ones first. Abstraction necessitates universality times neighbor. They reflect self universal because it attaches from the individual perspective. We can only decide from the pure local perspective because once we observe ourselves from the outside, choice becomes not just what we believe to do with this person to believe to, and that is to be considered by any person associated with believe to, since the external view does not give any consideration to the fact that this person me. Second, because no moral evidence distinction between persons when one act equals maximum, she extends the right to will of maximum to all individuals, so all maxims must be universalizable to be legitimate. Third, rational agents are equally rational, so reason for one is a reason for all course guard. The answer to the choice of any rational beings possessed by the rational nations is fully realized and goodwill taken the status of objective good. They are objectively valuable in the sense that every rational beings reason for to realize them. And states lack for reasons they are arbitrary and act policy, no reason all have to deliberate what to do for an act, so they're bound by the same moral obligations as all the rational agents. Thus, the meta-ethics is universalizable and acts of proper break fails to universalizability test entails willing both you achieve your end and cost another, not achieving her end at the same time, willing both that others with even you promise to achieve their ends and cost you achieving yours. This entails simultaneously willing both you and others achieve not achieve their ends, leading to a logical contradiction. Agreements made internationally functions promises the states obligated to fulfill them. So, I intend the U.S. treating juveniles adults violates international obligations shall light no 7. The U.S. ratified the International Pacific Political Rights Covenant in 1992, Committee on Human Rights and Plenty Authority for the Treaty Discharge 2060. U.S. non-compliance with the treaty by allowing LWP sentenced juveniles and made this determination, even considering the U.S. has taken a reservation for the treaty by allowing juvenile and adult court exceptional circumstances extraordinary rapid development. The sentence contradicts the assertion the U.S. applied sentence only exceptional circumstances of human rights found in the U.S. to be out of compliance with the treaty obligation, including this practice sending child defendants like Pole violates Article 24. He's going to try to send theory arguments stay there. This stay where he's not valuing he can reform the system. That means that he can change so he's not allowed for LWP for like adult LWP sentencing either. But that is entirely irrelevant because the point is that there's a prohibition on having LWP sentences for juveniles. Whether that prohibition not exists for adults, that means that we are permitted to treat adults and juveniles differently. So that means that there's still some sort of moral level distinction between 2 and you and the 8. Additionally, deontology means that you hold children, have mitigated culpability for children, even if they have necessary rationality, do not have necessary life experience, create content will to march superior. The immature agent has adjudicated conflicting motivational claims based on the principle that she cannot adjudicate these conflicts truly authoritative way for lack of established constitutions as represent critical perspective in misorganized. The fundamental constituents of agent motivational will must give her basic instructions to the person to determine, for example, whether impulses pursued desired objects stand relative impulses to others and mutually acceptable terms having determined ordering these impulses necessary condition to having character at all. Moreover, the implication that you have to treat your children differently becomes moral superior too. Paternalism towards children might be excusable. Paternalism usually prevents another from casting their vote as the legislating amendment possible repeating events. If the being whose will is bypassed not really have will yet, then the objection to paternalism loses force because the nature of its inability to normative to excuse paternalism. The excuse for paternalism follows. The implications that that's an deontological violation mean you have to negate the resolution. So that means that there are 2 levels on which you negate through the standard of universalizability. 1, because we have our obligation to other states, and 2nd, because we are obligated to our direct obligation to juveniles and adults are different. So they have to be treated. Okay. On the comparing worlds argument first, okay. First, the truth, like any evaluation of the true statement of the resolution is going to be like just as reciprocal. He has to prove the resolution true, I have to prove the resolution false. No way reason why comparing worlds paradigms is getting more reciprocal. The second I say that my argument is still going to function under comparing worlds paradigm, because I'm still advocating like a world, and I'm accepting indicts to that world. If he says negating the resolution is going to violate its obligations, and that means that obviously I have to accept those indicts. I'm not trying to get at it. Okay. Ryman and Hudson group it. Okay. First. There is no reason why causes are going to be important. I would argue the causes are absolutely relevant because the root causes are only point if we're trying to prevent some sort of end state affairs, any sort of consequence. That's the only reason why we want to root out causes and prevent that cause from occurring again. That presupposes utilitarianism, justification, utils. That means that it's anti-viciously circular. Second, I'm saying that the only obligation you have as individuals is not preventing crime. That is an end state affairs instead of respect to draft agents and our ability to will universalize maxims. That is I'm also going to be completely meta-ethical level. Okay. Strawson. Okay, the Strawson argument is essentially a determinism argument. But Strawson is misunderstanding the nature of rationality, because rationality is such that we have to deliberate what to do. The implication of that is that we have to postulate we have to act under the idea of freedom if we are free, even if it's impossible to know whether we're free or not. Korsgaard explains, we cannot conceive reason which constantly responsibility from the outside perspective for judgments. Imagine that you know your every move is programmed like electronic device and plan to do your brain shows you. But perhaps you decide to get up and spend more than walking, you no sooner make a decision that occurs to you must